Time to wrap up UFC 225 from here inside the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. I'm Ariel Helwani. That is Marc Raimondi. A fun night is in the books. Let us start, Marc, with the main event. Robert Whittaker is still the UFC middleweight champion. And guess what? Regardless of what would have happened tonight, he still would have been the UFC middleweight champion. But the news is that he won a very close fight, a very entertaining fight, a fight that may have a round of the year contender and maybe ends up being a fight of the year contender in the end for 2018. First off, right off the bat, who'd you score it for?
I scored it for Yoel Romero, and it was a weird fight in that I hate to use the old it was a tale of two fights cliche, but in some ways it was, because the first two rounds were clearly Whittaker. Romero looked like, I guess he was being patient to be, at least he looked like he was being patient to be nice, but it looked like he was maybe not recovered fully from the weight cut. But then, Yoel Romero, third round comes, he starts, throwing bombs on guys, and that's what happened. I thought he won the final three rounds, Romero, and I thought that the fifth round very well could have, maybe should have been a 10-8. So I guess I would have scored 48-46 for Romero.
In a somewhat, funny twist, if you want to call it funny, it was almost the exact opposite of the first fight, right? Because in the first fight, Romero won the first two rounds, and then Whittaker won 3, 4, and 5. Now here we thought, I think a lot of people would agree with your scorecard, that we were seeing the complete opposite, but in the end they gave the nod to Whittaker. Let's just put out this. We always have to put out this warning to the audience. This wasn't a robbery, right? This was a very close fight, or do you actually think it was pretty clear cut?
Okay. So the fourth round was the question mark. I thought Romero definitely won the third. You can't really argue that, right? He definitely won the fifth. There's no argument there. I guess you could argue that it wasn't a 10-8, but he definitely won the fifth. The argument is the fourth. Did he win the fourth? I thought he did. Whittaker probably won the majority of the round, but at the end of the round, Romero hit Whittaker with two huge shots, had him rocked, and then that was the most significant point, the most significant offense of the round. And if you're using the new rules, if you're using the rules that the ABC guidelines are, the language, it's the most. It's not the cumulative damage. It is the most significant impact of one single thing. What the most important thing is, and that was that. So I thought he won the final three rounds. So again, it's not. I guess I wouldn't call it a robbery, but I thought Romero won. I thought it was fairly not clear, but it was somewhere in between like a robbery and Whittaker winning. It was like there were close moments, but I'm having trouble describing this because it was kind of a weird fight.
And this is in my opinion, a double whammy for Romero, who missed weight yesterday, but who maintains, and his team maintains, that they weren't given the proper, information. They weren't given the proper time to cut weight. And then he comes here, and they all think that he won a fight. So what a disappointing weekend for him here in Chicago. It was a very entertaining fight. I thought it was a more entertaining fight than their first fight, which was a very entertaining fight in its own right. And let's give, regardless of how we feel the scorecards should have gone, let's give props to Robert Whittaker. I don't know how he survived that fifth round. I mean, he took some incredible shots and for the most part stayed standing. Yeah, there were times that he was down, but this is a guy who did not give up. And even in that third round when he took some incredible shots, he was then giving shots as well. I thought, and he broke his hand. He said, I thought he gained some new fans with this performance, even if you thought he lost the fight.
Oh yeah. Look, me saying Romero won, or feeling that Romero won, should take nothing away from Robert Whittaker. He fought great. How many people go into a fight with Yoel Romero and take those shots, those direct blows? No one really. He's the only guy. Now he's done it for two fights, and you have to wonder, his lack of a weight cut help. He's not really cutting a lot of water. He comes in replenished. Those great morning weigh-ins that we've discussed a whole lot this week. But yeah, Whittaker, I think is he's fantastic. I just hope that he doesn't stay injury prone. It seems like he comes out of these fights with Romero injured. He has injuries, in the off season. I hope he can get that corrected, because if he can, we could be talking about a guy who can hold the belt for a long time.
There was a strange narrative after the fight about having a rubber match, and Whittaker's not 2-0. Why in the world would he sign up for a third fight? So I don't think that is going to happen. No. We had Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Weidman sitting cage side. It feels like it's kind of a two horse race. Weidman hasn't fought since July. However, Weidman has a win over Gastelum. And Gastelum, of course, has a couple of wins since. However, Dana White said at the post-fight press conference that Gastelum was actually the plan to be the standby fighter for this fight. So they do this sometimes where they have someone on standby, they cut weight, they'll give him a little money if the fight doesn't come to fruition. However, he turned it down because he said he had some personal reasons and he wouldn't disclose what those reasons were. Given his demeanor, given what he said, do you feel like Weidman is now? And by the way, Dana said that Weidman's going to be out for quite some time. Weidman told me today that he's good to go in October. He's feeling great, and the hand is feeling a lot better. Who do you think is the leader, or do you go with someone else? Am I missing someone?
Well, I think it's all about timing, right? It usually is. Who knows when Whittaker is back? We don't know with his broken hand. It looked like he was even having trouble with his right leg. Also during the fight, he was kind of shaking it out a little bit in the later rounds. So I think it'll depend on that. He has injuries aside from that too that he's dealt with. So, I think it's so hard to say because Gastelum, I guess, has done more recently with the win over Jacare, but Weidman has the win over him. Yeah. So what do? You can't really. And then it really wouldn't make sense to rematch them either because I think stylistically that's why that's a Weidman advantage by a great deal. So it'll probably just depend on who's ready. When Whittaker is ready, which one of them, maybe Weidman gets lucky, he's out a little bit longer, Whittaker's out, they put them two together.
All right, let's talk about the co-main event now. Colby Covington is the new interim UFC welterweight champion. What a scene it is seeing him with that belt. He comes to the press conference with a water bottle that has a label. It says Nerd Tears on it. He says he's going to the White House. Dana said that he's going to try to make it happen, or he actually said that he will make it happen. Yeah. Of course, he has a friendship with President Trump, and Tyron Woodley has finally taken the bait. He is finally addressing him. He's tweeting him. And what I thought was most interesting is that Woodley's getting a lot of support for this. First, let's talk about the fight itself. Who'd you score it for? Colby Covington or RDA in the end? Covington got the nod, but I'm curious about your scorecard.
I actually had it for Dos Anjos. So that's two of the top fights tonight that I dissented with the judges. But it was a close fight. That one is definitely not a robbery. There's no way. It was a very close fight. I could see how the judges would have given it to Covington. Have no problem with that. Just one of those close fights, but I did have it for Dos Anjos.
Okay, and so what did you think of Covington's performance? Did you think it was, at least worthy of some of the judges giving him the nod? Or
yes.
Yeah, okay, because Joe Rogan was a big fan of his performance. He was showering him with accolades.
I couldn't hear Joe Rogan's commentary because I was press row, but I did see some things on the social media. Yeah, I thought Covington fought real well. Better than many people thought he would, and I think he exposed a little bit of a weakness in RDA's game in that maybe Dos Santos is really not that great going backward, going off his back foot. He pressured them the entire fight, all 5 rounds. And he got him down a few times. He had him up against the cage, and Dos Santos couldn't get his offense to click because of that constant pressure. Colby was there every time, changing levels, pushing up against the cage. Dos Santos was going straight back up into the cage. So yeah, I give Covington a ton of credit. I think again, even though I had it for Dos Anjos, I have no problem with Covington winning. And to me, he did impress me. I thought he was better than I thought he would be.
Woodley versus Covington feels like a big fight. Those two don't like each other. I think there'll be a lot of buzz. I'm curious to see where they put it. Right now, gun to your head, who are you favoring? How do you see it playing out?
Man, I would still favor Tyron Woodley, but I wouldn't be surprised. Look, I think Tyron Woodley has better wrestling than Rafael Dos Anjos, better defensive wrestling, wouldn't get caught in some of the spots that Dos Anjos did maybe tonight. Woodley's a phenomenal wrestler. He's fantastic. I'm not counting. I'm no longer counting Covington out. I think he's legit. Let's be honest. Shtick aside and the gimmick aside, he's a really good fighter. He's really good. He's got a shot to beat Woodley. But gun to my head, I would still favor Woodley in that matchup.
Holly Holm with a fantastic performance, a dominant win over Megan Anderson. I'm reminded of something Daniel Cormier said recently, and that is there's levels to this game. And I felt like in that fight, we were reminded that Holly Holm, at least right now, is at a different level. And when you consider her resume, a boxing resume, and certainly what she's done in MMA, and then when you consider the fact that Megan Anderson has not fought in 18 months, and she's been through a lot over this past year and a half, it just kind of it felt like Holly outclassed Megan Anderson. Now, afterwards, Holly said that, she wants both titles. She wants to go for 135, 145. First, let's talk about the performance itself. Were you surprised that it was that dominant? And in hindsight, I'll ask you the question now that I asked you on Friday, was it a mistake to book this fight?
I think that the key was early on, Holm changed her game plan. She tried to stand with Anderson, and Anderson early on in that first round hit her with some good shots, and I was right there on media row in the front row, and you could hear the volume of the shots that Anderson landed, including a big knee. And I think as soon as Holm kind of saw that, she adjusted, started taking her down, and then just dominated the fight from there. And that's just veteran guile. That's just having a game plan, being able to adjust. Great coaching, of course. Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohn in her corner, Izzy Martinez. So I think that it was ended up being a one-sided fight, but I don't know if it was a mistake to make it. I kind of. They are kind of in a weird spot because Holm probably wants to be a 135. That's what it seems like. She's kind of intimated, like she feels like that's her home. But now she's the number one contender at 145. She's the number one contender at 135. So I guess they have a decision to make, and now it kind of eliminates Megan Anderson from the 145 title picture. So I guess in a perfect world, you just put Holm with Nunes and you put Cyborg with Anderson, and you have two title fights, and now you're kind of stuck with Holm, with 1 foot in one division and 1 foot in the other division, and Anderson out.
Do you think Anderson can hang with Cyborg? Is she ready for a Cyborg right now after what you saw tonight?
Well, we didn't know that heading into this fight. Okay. We didn't know. I'm saying if this fight didn't happen, she was the Invicta champion. She was the 145. She's a true 145er. Everyone keeps saying, well, Cyborg's not even fighting girls from her own size. Well, Megan Anderson is bigger than Cyborg. So, they could have sold that at least. Now you can't sell it because she just lost to Holly Holm.
All right, now let's talk about CM Punk versus Mike Jackson. If anyone at home did not watch that fight, and of course it was ultimately won by Mike Jackson. He won a fairly one-sided decision over CM Punk. If anyone out there did not watch that fight, how would you describe it to them?
Wow, that's very open-ended, Ariel.
Not really open-ended. I'm asking for the description of the fight from your point of view.
I'm going to break out some play-by-play.
No, what did you think of the fight?
It was clear that Mike Jackson is a combat sports athlete, at least in some regard, and CM Punk is not a combat sports athlete. He's a guy who trains. He's been training. I know he's had some injury setbacks, but he's just not of that caliber. Look, if you watch the whole card, this was a great card tonight. You watch that whole card, and then you get to the opener of the main card. You see CM Punk and Mike Jackson. It's just not of that quality, of that caliber. I know that the term UFC caliber is kind of misused and overused now, and it doesn't really exist. But that fight, it was not. I'm very confident saying it was not UFC caliber. Mike Jackson landed quite often, pretty much at will on the feet against CM Punk, but also CM Punk got caught on the bottom for the better part of 2 rounds, and Mike Jackson was kind of just messing around, showboating a little bit, hitting him with some bolo punches, hitting him to the face, kind of looking up at the camera. It was weird. CM Punk took a beating. He was bleeding. He was bleeding. He got transported to the hospital for possible facial injuries, possibly broken bones. Dana White did not like Mike Jackson's shtick, I guess. Not finishing the fight when he looked like he had a chance. He was toying with him at some points. That's my best way of describing it. I know that's kind of long-winded, but yeah.
Dana White also said that he regretted putting it on the pay-per-view. He also said he wish
more because of Mike Jackson than CM Punk, though, because he felt like Mike Jackson should have just ended it quickly. It could have been over. Didn't have to be 3 rounds.
He said Mike Jackson's days in the UFC are done, and that's no surprise because they were done after the Gulf fight and they brought him back for Punk. And he also said that he thinks that CM Punk should hang him up. Would you like to see CM Punk go to the regional scene and work his way, up the ladder, or do you just feel like at this stage, at this age, it's just not going to come together for him?
He's 39. It's going to be hard. It's just he's a guy that he just has years and years of miles from wrestling, and he was really never the greatest athlete in pro wrestling either. He was always the guy that got by with his smarts and his psychology and his microphone skills and that kind of thing. he was a great wrestler, but not because he was a great athlete. Put it that way. So it's really up to him if he wants to. If his days in the UFC are numbered, it seems like they are. If he wants to go to Bellator, I'm sure Bellator would love to have him. He's still a guy that can draw. I mean, when he came out, the crowd was loud. There were loud CM Punk chants. Even in the third round, when it was kind of a not a great fight at that point, there were still loud CM Punk chants. So he wants to go to Bellator, and I'm sure Scott Coker and Rich Chow and those guys over there can find some people of his experience level to fight. I mean, I'll watch it.
Or he can just decide to go, dare I say, all in. Mark?
I'm not really sure what you're talking about.
Go all in and get paid, right? Let's be honest. Massive draw still there, right? People would pay. People still care. People get excited about the idea of him coming back, even if it's not on the biggest stage. So there are options for him, maybe not just here in the UFC.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about pro wrestling, there are amazing options for him. He can still make a whole bunch of money in pro wrestling.
I mean, could you imagine him versus Kenny Omega? Could you imagine, Mark, for a second?
I feel like you're mocking me a little.
No, I just
like you're making fun of me.
Wrestle Kingdom, it'd be incredible.
It was that. Well, yeah, the Tokyo.
Wake up at 4 a.m. and watch it together. It'd be nuts.
If you're on the West Coast, it isn't so bad. But yeah, I mean, CM Punk still has options. He can still go to Bellator. I'm sure. I mean, I don't. Is Scott Coker going to turn him away? I don't think so. I think they're probably even better positioned to give him fights that he could, possibly win or look better in. It's up to him, man. If this is what he wants to do, and people are still willing to pay him for it, live it up. If he wants to go to pro wrestling, I wouldn't be upset as a pro wrestling fan, and as a fan of his work in pro wrestling, I wouldn't be upset by that either.
Bit of a changing of the guard at heavyweight. Tai Tuivasa with the win over Andrei Arlovsky, and perhaps even more impressive was the fact that he actually had 2 shoeys, both with spit. I asked him if he was going to do another one. He said for me to put alcohol in my shoe. I said I didn't have alcohol. He then suggested that I urinate in my shoe, and he said he has done this before, but I declined. Nevertheless, a fun outing by Tai Tuivasa. He even walked out to Celine Dion's "My Heart Will Go On." And then how about Curtis Blades with the vicious finish over Alistair Overeem and slicing up above both eyes. It was hard to watch. Claudia Gadelha and Carlos Esparza had a fun fight, ultimately won by Gadelha, who was transported to the local hospital. Anthony Smith knocking out Rashad Evans. Any other performance you want to talk about? Sergio Pettis with the big win, maybe the biggest of his career over Joseph Benavidez. Mirsad Bektic with a big performance over Ricardo Lamas. Any other win, performance, fighter you want to give a shout out to? Maybe even 2 if you want. It's no time limit here, Mark. Before we say goodnight.
Well, first I want to say how great of a sport is this that we've covered. Just in the last few minutes, we've covered a guy who wants to bring his interim title belt to the White House and see Donald Trump, who runs down people who don't stand for the national anthem. We talk about a pro wrestler coming in with his second fight and getting beaten up and going to the hospital. And then we're talking about shoeys and whatever you just said. I don't even want to get back into that. I thought the Claudia Gadelha Carla Esparza fight, which was kind of my dark horse sleeper fight on Friday, I thought that was a really good fight. I thought Esparza actually had her winning. I thought she won the fight. It was close. I thought she won. And who would have thought that she would have kind of gotten the better of Gadelha on the feet? I would not have expected that. And to me, it's a testament to where she's come from, because she was the champion. She kind of got destroyed by Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and that could have been something that could be mentally crippling for some athletes. And she's come back and she's better than she's ever been. So, shout out to her. Sergio Pettis, big win over Joseph Benavidez, the biggest win of his career. Also a close fight. We had a lot of split decisions, a lot of close fights. Some commission fun as usual. There's never any lack of that. But yeah, I mean it was a strong card.
One fight that wasn't close, Dan Ige against Mike Santiago, a very emphatic win for Hawaii's own Dan Ige. So yeah, fun night, top to bottom. There was a ton of drama all week, but in the end, I think the fans here in Chicago got what they paid for. And by the way, according to Dana White, largest crowd in the history of this building for anything outside of a Bulls game. Of course, the Bulls are king here in Chicago still, but 18,000 plus fans here in Chicago. So a successful night for the Ultimate Fighting Championship here in the Windy City. All right, we are out of time. Thank you very much for watching our coverage all week long from here in Chicago. Yes, Mark.
It's your last one.
Well,
MMA fighting. This is Ariel's last road trip for MMA fighting, last post-fight show. Gonna miss you, man.
I will miss you too.
We had some good times doing this.
Good times. Dare I say, excellent times.
The best. The best.
The best times.
Yeah. Gonna miss you. Miss you, bud.
I will miss you too, but I don't believe
I'll
in.
see you in a few weeks, but
I don't believe in goodbyes. I believe in see you later. So I will say see you later to Marc and the crew here. Thank you very much for watching our coverage all week long here in Chicago. Back on Monday for the MMA Hour. We have a lot to talk about, so we'll see you then. For now, good night from Chicago.